My experience has been that once you step into the calling, you can't unsee it. You can't stop being a part of it. You can't stop feeling that. You can't go back. If you ask yourself, can I go back to what I was doing? That's a heck no. And if I was going to survive as an entrepreneur, I was going to have to cut the crap and step up and lead and be willing to make some mistakes, be willing to not know. Well, maybe there's more power in vulnerability than we thought. And I remember Matt saying, do you need to just go back and get a job? And I was like, hell no. That was the moment. No, I am going to make this work. That collective growth, I am meant to do important work in this world. And launching this podcast, vulnerable. This is vulnerability. But in order to scale, in order for additional people to come on the team to do this work, in order for us to have a bigger impact, this is really what's needed. Hi there. Welcome to Inner Work. I'm MaryAnn Means-Dufrene, and I started this podcast because I'm really interested in stories about how people build things. What's the story of how something got built? But something that's often missing is the story behind that. What happened to the leader? What was the original vision that the leader had, or what drove this leader, this founder, this entrepreneur to create this thing or move forward? And what was unexpected about that journey? What inner work did it take to move this vision and this desire and these goals forward? That's the story that I really want to be able to focus on. And so that's why I'm starting Inner Work. We talk about what leaders build, but what builds them? And that's kind of the play on words and the energy that got this ball rolling for me. Of course, it all starts with noticing, but then what's next? What comes after that? And so this show is going to be about that journey, the inner journey, the breakdowns, the identity shifts, the wake-up calls that change all of us along the way. And it's personally important to me because that's what my journey has been: breakdowns, identity shifts, and challenges that I've needed to first recognize, notice, and grapple with, and then work to overcome. And I've seen this same journey in every leader that I coach. It's not just about the strategy or the goals or the things that we're wanting to move forward. It's about ourselves. My very first leadership program that I put together was in 3 stages. I don't talk about it this way anymore, but I still think of it that way. And that's a logical progression of leading self, leading others, and then leading organization. And the most fascinating and rewarding part, honestly, because we feel it every day and our families feel it every day, is this development of self. And so if you're here, if you're with me on this journey, because the pressure of leadership sometimes can feel lonely, can feel messy, and it feels really personal, then you're in the right place. So I'm glad you're here. I started off 2018, 2019, founding Collective Growth with a business partner. And that began just a chain of events that have led to today. So many things, so unexpected. And my business partner was a blessing in so many ways. And one of the things that I know she grappled with and that I grappled with was that I literally called myself a reluctant entrepreneur. And I'm glad I did that because it was honest, but it was also just showed I was not ready to step into what it meant to be an entrepreneur, a creator, or an originator. That was so scary to me. Yet I was answering the call. So it's this both and around what I stepped into and I did it the best that I could. So I want to honor that. But it was this sense that this was happening and it was happening to me, rather than me owning it and governing it. And I remember my business partner saying, step into your power. This may or may not have been out of her tremendous frustration with me, because she could see the potential and she could see that I can do this. But it's taken 7 years to peel back the layers around this. And still some days I face that uncertainty or this sense of holding off, staving off. But gradually and gracefully, thank God, I've been able to step much more toward owning my own experience and appreciating the potential that I have. But the sense of being a reluctant entrepreneur was born out of this desire to help. So collective growth for both of us, born out of this desire to help, desire to use our gifts in the world. And it took on a life of its own. We experienced some early success, saw an immediate need for the culture and leadership development work that we were doing, which was huge. And then there was also this hurry up and figure this out, that we've got theory, we've got education, where we know we have experience to fall back on, but we're creating something new. And when you create something new, it's a whole different process around really owning the concepts of it, stepping into it. There's a lot of bravery there that I didn't anticipate. I anticipated bravery around tolerating some of the unexpected financial elements and needing to sell in addition to doing the work, but I didn't expect some of the fears that crept up around just the work itself. But there was this desire to help, stepping into, we call it now at Collective Growth, stepping into the fray with our clients. That's one of our core values. And quickly realized how much work it was gonna take, that this was gonna be the result of team efforts, not a solo, not an individual person. We quickly got busy. We built a great body of work together, as a lot of people know, helping to build the culture and leadership platform and really organizational platform for Hotel Drover here with Majestic Realty. And that went on for 2.5, 3 years, and then ended up having just differences of opinion and different perspectives on what collective growth was meant to do in the world, and purchased full interest in collective growth in 2021. And at that same time, my husband and I were preparing to have our second child. And when Margot was born, I was at this crossroads of, okay, so here's where reluctant entrepreneur is again. And do I wanna be a mom and spend more time doing that? Is collective growth now gonna be a side hustle? So I dallied, I played with that a little bit, and I remember saying to my sister, I think if collective growth is gonna become as big as it could be, it's gonna be somebody else that builds the business side. I really wanna do the client work." And while that could be a legitimate perspective, as I look back on it now, that made me feel safe to say, I wanna have everything. I wanna get to be a mom, I wanna do work I enjoy, and if that could happen and I hadn't had to have income, collective growth might still be a side hustle today, and thankfully, that's not what happened. I realized quickly an income need, and that if collective growth was going to survive, if I was gonna survive as an entrepreneur, I was gonna have to cut the crap and step up and lead, and be willing to make some mistakes, be willing to not know. And as a consultant, to not know the answer is, you think, not appropriate. I can't not know the answer. I have to know the answer to everything. Well, maybe there's more power in vulnerability than we thought. But I had that moment of, and I remember Matt saying, "Do you need to just go back and get a job?" And I was like, "Hell no." That was the moment. No, I am gonna make this work. That collective growth, I am meant to do important work in this world, and I'm going to step into it, and I'm gonna figure it out. And my prayer life deepened out of necessity. My faith walk deepened out of necessity, because there's this sense of calling. Everything changed in that moment from, if it happens, it happens. That was kind of the, if it's meant to be, the Lord will bless it, to, I'm gonna give this every ounce of energy and passion that I've got, because the work makes a difference, and I'm meant to do something in the world, and it's time. And I wanna show my kids that we can make a difference in the world, and that we can even chart our own path. I think that was never a part of my paradigm, that I was gonna be an entrepreneur and I was gonna do something different and I was a creator. And it turns out that really is a part of how I'm made. And it took this situation of make it or break it for me to accept that and be willing to step into that and bring it to life. And with this full commitment, with this 100% I am in, everything really shifted. I started to find my voice, not because I didn't have one before, but because I'd really been hiding. I'd been afraid to step into what I knew to be true. And this was true for me interpersonally with Matt, with my husband. This was true for me in relationships at work. And I saw how everything was leading up to this moment. And my coaching certification through Adventures West, everything was leading up to this moment of, girl, this is it. Step into this now. This is the calling. This is the work. And I started reconnecting with a deeper part of myself. And in this process, I didn't always feel confident, but I felt called. And that was enough to start taking these steps. And this is part of the journey today where I hustle to gain control of something and to figure something out, and then I put it into motion, and then I feel out of control again. It's these cycles, but that was one of these cycles where it was, okay, I'm stepping in. This is where I'm meant to be. Define it and take the next step and submit the worry and the anxiety and the fear and keep going. And I did a video about this a couple of weeks ago on a day when I was having a hard time. And this is a part of the journey that we're meant to speak into what we personally experience. And that day I was overwhelmed with some financial pressure, some work pressure, some deadlines, having this incredible team that I love that's dependent on this organization and shouldering that burden and knowing that I can't do it alone. But I was having an emotional day. Also, perimenopause. Don't know who else out there is experiencing some of these hormonal shifts. It's like, ladies, it goes from bad to worse. Hang in there, everybody. It gets better. I don't know. Does it? But was having a tougher day and thought about something that I'd listened to recently. And I did a LinkedIn and an Instagram post about this, that Warren Buffett can be credited with so much, but that mainly he hung in there over the course of his life, beginning serious investing at age 10 to now being 94. And while, yes, he's incredibly brilliant, the amassing of his wealth came from doing consistent things over time. And so today may not be my best day, but if I show up and I give it my best, that will be honored. And that particular day when I was struggling, that was a message I needed to hear. And I turned it into a message for other people because I needed to hear it. And just producing that video got me in a better state of mind. And to me, that was the perfect microcosm of we speak to what we know intimately. We are called to speak to the lessons that we're learning and how we can help other people who are in this same space, people who we know their names and people who we don't. And that's really my hope and prayer for the work that we do at Collective Growth and for this podcast, Inner Work, is that it impacts people in an unexpected way and in a way that helps them to be more sustainable, helps you to be more sustainable in your energy levels and more hopeful and encouraging toward yourself and your teams, because we're learning the lessons of life through leadership. And I feel blessed to be able to be in this space. And I'm so excited about the leaders that we're going to have on the show because we know their external successes. We know the millions of dollars that they've made and what they've built and how they support communities. But what has their inner journey been like? And I'm honored to be able to share my story and these stories with all of you. So how did this journey change me? Well, I'm not here now because I have it all figured out. That's for sure. I'm here because I keep doing the work. Exactly to our point with Warren Buffett. I keep doing the work of vulnerability. And my team may actually be like, please stop being so vulnerable. You're scary. I don't know. But I express my perspective on things for my internal team and for my clients, even when it feels risky. That's why people are investing in collective growth and why people are investing in the work that you do. It's because you bring something to the work that is needed and your voice needs to be heard. If you want to put something in Chat GPT, or you want to look something up in Google and produce a manifesto that sounds like everybody else, you can. But what is most valuable and rewarding is to use your voice. And that inherently is vulnerable. And launching this podcast, vulnerable. This is this is vulnerability um, underway. Selling services to strangers, vulnerable. And I set that up in opposition to selling to friends. I know the people in my network who could use my services and how it will benefit them. That's a friendly, warm sell, right? I know that they trust me. They want to hear what I have to say. We're now on the cusp of more broad-based marketing and doing business to business selling. And it's frightening to put the content out there and say, do people believe in this enough to buy it? But in order to scale, in order for additional people to come on the team to do this work, in order for us to have a bigger impact, this is really what's needed. So this whole being a creator, creating things that haven't existed before, believing in my own voice enough to try to sell that, vulnerability. And it feels really exposing, but I'm choosing to do it anyway, day in, day out. And as a result, my confidence is growing. So, and when I'm more confident, my brain is more peaceful and not activated. My fight or flight diminishes so that I can then be more creative. So it's this beautiful upward spiral, like we've talked about on the Great Noticing before, that I get to engage in, and that I hope that we all can, and that inner work can be a small part of that. Um, m My experience has been that once you step into the calling, you can't unsee it. You can't stop being a part of it. You can't stop feeling that. You can't go back. Even when it's messy, you have to move forward. And that example of, do I wanna be a W-2 again? Absolutely not. Those questions that might come up when we ask ourselves, "Can I do this?" That's a big, broad, wide open. If you ask yourself, "Can I go back to what I was doing?" That's a heck no. You immediately know how you're moving forward, and that's really been the journey, is that taking the risk, stepping forward, stepping into it, has been frightening, but also so fulfilling, and such a feeling of being alive and contributing in a powerful way. You can't stop. And that's what I hope for all of us. That's what I hope for my kids, is that they are catapulted into something that they love so much they can't stop doing it. They couldn't stop doing it even if they tried. So, what about the podcast? We hear about your story, MaryAnn. What about the podcast? So every episode will explore a different piece of the internal journey of leadership. You've heard now a little bit about mine, and there's so many layers. You don't want to hear it, but I could go on and on. But on Inner Work, you'll hear stories of leaders at their turning points. So when things looked great on the outside, but things may have been falling apart on the inside. And that could be inside the organization, that could be in their relationships, within their family. There's never a like homeostasis in our lives of everything is going well. We all know this. Yet we believe that lie that we see on Instagram and on LinkedIn, that somebody's doing really great. Well, they're doing a great social media post, myself included. It doesn't mean that day is great. It doesn't mean it's without struggle. But that's also a truth that the more mature and wise we become, the more we see that it's all of these things, that the what I put in the post is true, and I'm living in this particular moment and accepting this goodness, and then 10 minutes later, I might be struggling with something. That's part of the richness of life and how it's all woven together, and something I'm trying to really experience and appreciate more these days is the richness and the reward of life comes not through being happy every moment, but through a deepening experience and the ability to hold and experience a really wide range of emotions and not let them overcome me. And that's an important practice. I think that a lot of our leaders will probably share, is to be able to ride these waves of highs and lows and find more steadiness, and sustainability in it. And sustainability is something we're all talking about in business culture and in life. And it's so important for us to do as we grow, and becomes more and more important because our bodies just can't hold that level of stress and variability that they once did. It's like that's the blessing of being young, is your body can do all kinds of things, and the wisdom of our bodies as we grow older. And a client said yesterday, body keeps the score. Sure does. And beautifully, if we listen to it and start to trust it, it will carry us forward with more intention and more peace and more solidity. We can be really solid and steady in that if we trust ourselves. But we'll talk about burnout. Who's struggled with that over time for sure, these cycles of sprints and then not enough recovery. So burnout and reinvention and shame, building trust, rebuilding culture from the inside out, starting with ourselves as leaders. So some really incredible and rich topics there. And, we may have leaders that say, hey, here's a couple things I recommend, or here's 3 things that I recommend that you do for your team, or how you can set yourself up for success energetically. Or if you're starting a business, do these 5 things. But this is not going to be a checklist format. This is going to be an honest conversation. And you'll get to hear how people changed who they were and their responses to the things that life was throwing at them. Not just what they did, not just the step 1, step 2, step 3, but people's real experience and recommendations that they have that we can put into practice. And I'm just as excited to hear these things as you are. What I want you to know is that if you're listening and you're in a moment of shift where everything looks fine on the outside, but something may be off inside, or you're really struggling with a particular issue, I want you to know that you're not alone, and that honestly, it sounds morbid, but it's really not. It's really hopeful that the more we grow, the more heaviness we can take on, the more challenging we can expect life to be, and that we can be met with grace to handle it. And I'm thinking of a quote right now, Rilke. The purpose of life is to be defeated by greater and greater things. This is a quote that I use in one of my modules, talking about the art of falling in optimal leadership. And it's frightening and true that if we can have this long view of life and think differently about failure and defeat, and adopt more of a growth mindset and a perspective on how we step into life, that our struggles should get bigger because we're carrying more. And to me, who then do we turn those struggles over to is one of the bigger questions. And for me, it's a faith journey. For other people, it's trusting the universe. There are a lot of ways that people approach it that work for them, but we do need those resources, a community of people. But that's part of the journey. And I'm grateful that we're in it together. Because behind every press release, every polished sentence, every celebration, every award photo is a hidden story. I've got a story, you've got a story. There's a moment of fear, a moment of doubt, or a reckoning that makes us become who we are. And this process of becoming, this fruitional journey, is so beautiful. And it's beautiful when you're in it, and it's beautiful to see it in others. And that's what inner work is about. I'm so glad that you're going to be joining us on this journey. So please stay tuned. We're going to have announcements on our future guests, and all of them will be like this, just an easy conversation about the inner work of leadership, about a critical story or moment or something that a leader learned. And I want you to know, if you're in the middle of your own leadership shift, or one is coming, reach out. Let's have a one-on-one call. I'd be happy to talk with you more about my journey, about the journey that you have underway. That's what we do at Collective Growth, is support leaders and support leadership teams and organizations in being their best in the process of becoming. And it's a joy just to be able to do that and to have these types of conversations. So collectivegrowthleadership.com, and you can book a call there. Love to hear from you. But so excited to share inner work with you, to share this journey. Please like and share this content, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much.